My name is Emily Parker, and at 28, I never thought I'd be creeping down the hallway of my childhood home, eavesdropping like a teenager. But there I was, suitcases barely unpacked, when I heard my sister Brooke's voice drift from the kitchen. "I can't wait for Emily to leave," she whispered to our mother. I stomach drop. After losing everything in New York, I'd hoped home would heal me, not break me further. I forced a smile, quietly shut the door to my so-called temporary room, and pretended my world hadn't just shattered again. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from in the comments, hit subscribe, and stick around. Trust me, what happened next changed everything about the sister I thought I knew. The glossy Manhattan skyline had been my backdrop for 5 years. As senior marketing executive at Horizon Media, I'd built the life I'd always dreamed about since leaving our small Michigan town. My apartment in Chelsea wasn't huge, but it was mine, a testament to how far I'd come from the bedroom I shared with Brooke growing up. I had friends, a boyfriend named Jake who worked in finance, and enough disposable income to enjoy everything New York offered. Until Black Wednesday, as we called it at the office. The merger everyone feared was announced, and entire departments disappear overnight. Mine included. Restructuring, they called it, in the sterile conference room where my team sat shell-shocked as security waited to escort us out. 5 years of 60-hour weeks ended with a white cardboard box of desk plants and photos. "You'll land on your feet, Em," my boss said, not meeting my eyes as I handed over my badge. "Your talent won't go unnoticed for long." But it did. 3 months of interviews led nowhere in a saturated market. Each rejection email chipped away at my confidence. My savings dwindled as Manhattan rent continued, unforgiving as ever. The final blow came via text. Jake, who'd promised to stand by me, decided my career uncertainty was too much negativity during his bonus season. "Think we need space," he wrote, probably between meetings, not even bothering with a call after 8 months together. That night, I called my mother, Kate, sobbing in a way I hadn't allowed myself to do since leaving home. "Come home, Emmy," Mom said, using my childhood nickname, "just until you get back on your feet." The childhood home I returned to looked smaller than I remembered. The blue shutters needed painting, and the maple tree in the yard had grown enormous. Mom hugged me tightly on the porch, her familiar lavender perfume washing over me. "Welcome home, sweetheart," she said, taking one of my suitcases. Brooke arrived minutes later, her SUV pulling into the driveway. Her smile seemed genuine as she hugged me, but something felt off. "The prodigal New Yorker returns," she said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ryan and the kids can't wait to see you." I'd only met my niece Lily when she was a toddler, and nephew Noah was born after my last visit home. Brooke had always been the family-oriented sister married to her high school sweetheart Ryan by 23, 2 kids by 27, and firmly rooted in our hometown. I'd chosen a different path, and sometimes felt the silent judgment from her about my choice. That first evening felt awkward but hopeful. Mom made my favorite lasagna, and we sat around the kitchen table as though I'd never left. But when Mom showed me to my room, reality set in. "We converted your old bedroom into my home office," Mom explained, leading me to the basement guest room instead. "Brooke helped me set it up when I started selling those wellness products." The basement room was nice enough, clean and recently painted, but seeing my childhood bedroom transform into my mother's multi-level marketing headquarters stung more than I expected. I debate trophies and college pennants were nowhere to be seen, replaced by motivational quotes and product displays. "Your things are in boxes in the garage," Mom added, noting my expression. "We didn't think you'd mind since you were so settled in New York." That night, unpacking my designer clothes into the musty basement dresser, I scrolled through my phone. Social media showed Jake already at a Hamptons party with a blonde I recognized from his office. My former colleagues posted about new jobs and moving forward. Meanwhile, I was back in my hometown, sleeping in a basement, with no prospects in sight. Brooke knocked on my door around 11, bearing a glass of wine. "Thought you might need this," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Must be weird being back." Thanks, I said, taking the wine gratefully. It's an adjustment. How long do you think you'll stay? She asked, too casually. Not sure until I find something solid, I guess. She nodded, twisting her wedding ring. Well, we're glad to have you for however long. Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. My successful, confident sister couldn't possibly feel threatened by my presence, could she? As days turned into weeks, I established a routine. Mornings searching for jobs online, afternoons helping Mom around the house, evenings pretending everything was fine while Brooke and her picture-perfect family came over for dinner. Ryan was genuinely friendly, asking about New York and my career with real interest. The kids were adorable, Lily with Brooke's blonde curls and Noah with Ryan's dimple. But beneath the surface pleasantries, I sensed something brewing. The way conversations sometimes stopped when I entered rooms. The sympathetic glances from neighbors at the grocery store. The way Brooke subtly mentioned my situation whenever introducing me to her friends. I was starting to realize that coming home hadn't simplified my life, it had complicated it in ways I never anticipated. 1 week into my stay, the forced politeness from Brooke began showing cracks. At breakfast, she'd sigh loudly whenever I mentioned job applications for positions in Chicago or Detroit. There are marketing jobs at the mall, she'd say, buttering her toast with unnecessary force. Macy's is always hiring. Mom would give me a pleading look, silently asking me not to engage. I'd swallow my retort along with my coffee, reminding myself this was temporary. Ryan, however, was a surprising ally. When he'd drop by with the kids, he'd ask thoughtful questions about my career and seemed genuinely impressed by my portfolio. You worked on that campaign. Emily, that's incredible, he said one evening, looking at my digital portfolio. I always see those ads when I'm traveling for work. Lily and Noah quickly became my favorite people in the house. 8-year-old Lily was curious about everything New York, from skyscrapers to Broadway shows. 6-year-old Noah would crawl into my lap with books, fascinated by my funny New York accent that I didn't realize I'd developed. Aunt Emily, can you take me to New York someday? Lily asked, eyes wide with wonder. Before I could answer, Brooke cut in. New York is dirty and dangerous, sweetie. Besides, Aunt Emily probably won't be going back there. The edge in her voice was unmistakable. My first real clue that something was wrong came at the local supermarket. Mrs. Delaney, my former English teacher, approached me in the produce section. Emily, dear, she said, patting my arm. I was so sorry to hear about your difficulties. A mental breakdown in such a high-pressure environment happens to the best of us. Your sister has been so worried. I stood frozen, organic apples forgotten in my hand. Mental breakdown. Oh, Mrs. Delaney looked flustered. Brooke mentioned, well, that you were struggling with the pace of city life. That it all became too much. Blood rushed to my face. Mrs. Delaney, I was laid off due to a company merger. There was no breakdown. The awkward conversation ended quickly, but my mind raced. Back home, I confronted Brooke as she helped Mom prepare dinner. Why are people in town thinking I had a mental breakdown? Brooke barely looked up from chopping carrots. I never said that exactly. I just mentioned you were going through a tough time. People interpret things their own way. Brooke, Mrs. Delaney specifically mentioned a breakdown. That didn't come from nowhere. Mom stepped between us, always the peacekeeper. Emily, I'm sure it was a misunderstanding. Brooke was just concerned about you. Mom, she's spreading rumors about my mental health. Please don't start drama, Mom sighed. You've only been home a week. Let's not rock the boat. The boat, apparently, was only to be rocked by Brooke. Later that week, I overheard her on the phone in the backyard. Yeah, she's still here, living in the basement. No job prospects. I know, right? All that New York success story stuff, and now she's right back where she started. Mom's letting her stay rent-free, of course. I retreated silently, hurt burning in my chest. My job search intensified not just for career reasons now, but to escape this house where I increasingly felt unwelcome. Seeking refuge from the tension at home, I began spending mornings at the local coffee shop, Perks. The owner, Melanie Chen, remembered me from high school and offered me a quiet corner table for my laptop. "First coffees on the house for returning locals," she said with a genuine smile. "Especially the ones who used to help me with calculus homework." Over the weeks, Melanie became a friend and unexpected source of information. During slow periods, she'd bring fresh scones to my table and chat. "So your sister was in here yesterday with her mom group," Melanie mentioned casually one morning. "She had quite a lot to say about your job in New York." I looked up from my laptop. "Oh, according to Brooke, you were basically getting coffee for real executives and exaggerated your position." Melanie raised an eyebrow. "Which is funny because I distinctly remember you mentioning leading campaigns for major brands when you first came in." The realization that Brooke was actively undermining me around town settled like ice in my stomach. It wasn't just passive-aggressive comments at home, she was systematically destroying my reputation. Meanwhile, to hear Brooke tell it, she's practically running the school district administration single-handedly, Melanie added, rolling her eyes. "Though everyone knows she's just on the PTA fundraising committee." I attempted to reconnect with Amber Lewis, my best friend from high school. We'd stayed in loose contact over social media, but hadn't had a real conversation in years. When I texted her about meeting for drinks, her response was lukewarm at best. When we finally met at the local bar, the reason became clear. "I wasn't sure I should come," Amber admitted after her first glass of wine. "Brooke mentioned you were going through a lot and needed space from old connections." Brooke said what? "She's been telling people you specifically don't want to see old friends because you're embarrassed about losing your job." Amber looked uncomfortable. "But then I saw you at Perks and you seemed fine, so I figured she might be exaggerating." "Amber, I've been trying to connect with people since I got back. Brooke's been telling everyone I had a mental breakdown." Amber's eyes widened. "That explains a lot. She and I have gotten close since she started the neighborhood book club. She always talked about you like she was worried, but now I'm wondering if she was trying to isolate me," I finished. "Yeah, I'm wondering the same thing." As days stretched into weeks, I found unexpected joy in spending time with Lily and Noah. Brooke's work with the PTA and Ryan's frequent business trips meant the kids often ended up at Mom's house after school. I began helping with homework, discovering that Lily had inherited my love of books and Noah had a talent for art that no one had noticed. "Aunt Emily, can you read this chapter with me?" Lily would ask, curling up beside me on the couch. "Mom never does the voices like you do." "Aunt Emily, look at my drawing," Noah would proudly display his latest creation. "It's you and me in New York." These moments became bright spots in increasingly dark days. Brooke noticed the growing bond and began limiting their visits. "The kids need structure, not someone filling their heads with big city dreams," she told Mom when she thought I couldn't hear. One rainy afternoon, while searching for an umbrella in the hall closet, I found a box labeled Family Photos. Curious about seeing some old memories, I pulled it down and began sifting through decades of Parker family history. What I found disturbed me. In photo after photo from family events, Christmases, Thanksgivings, summer barbecues, I noticed a pattern. I was either positioned at the edge where I could be easily cropped out, or missing entirely from gatherings I definitely remembered attending. In several photos, there were obvious gaps where someone had been cut out, the edge of my favorite blue dress just visible at the frame's border. Even more telling were school photos. Every one of Brooke's professional portraits was preserved in frames or albums. Mine were mostly missing, except a few tucked haphazardly in the box bottom. I brought this up with Mom, trying to keep my tone light despite my hurt. "Oh, Emily," she sighed, "you're being oversensitive. We have plenty of photos of you." "Show me," I challenged, "because that box tells a different story." She changed the subject, as she always did when confronted with anything uncomfortable. The discoveries continued. While helping Mom organize some financial paperwork, something she'd always struggled with, I came across old bank statements that made my blood run cold. "Mom, what's this withdrawal from my college fund in 2014? That was the year I started at NYU." Mom suddenly became very interested in organizing paper clips. Well, sweetie, you got that scholarship, remember? And Brooke's wedding was that summer. The pieces clicked together. You used my college fund for Brooke's wedding? The fund Grandma set up for my education. You didn't need it. You had that wonderful scholarship, and Brooke and Ryan were just starting out. It was only fair to help them have a nice wedding. Fair, my voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I worked 3 campus jobs to cover what my scholarship didn't. I graduated with $40,000 in student loans. Well, you had that big New York salary, Mom replied defensively. Brooke stayed local, took care of family. Different choices, different support. That night, searching for my high school yearbooks in the garage, I discovered boxes of my belongings had been sold or given away. Awards, memorabilia, even the vintage record collection I'd carefully curated as a teenager all gone. When confronted, Mom admitted Brooke had organized a garage sale during my second year in New York. You never asked about those things, was her weak justification. The invasion of privacy escalated when I discovered Brooke had been reading my emails. I'd left my laptop open while helping Noah with a school project, returning to find the screen on my job search folder. Only later did I notice several unread emails had been marked as read. The following day, I received a strange call from a marketing firm in Detroit where I'd had a promising interview. Miss Parker, we're calling to confirm you've withdrawn your application as your sister indicated. I'm sorry, what, my sister? Yes, Brooke Parker called this morning. She said you'd found a position locally and wanted to withdraw from consideration. She was very specific. Ice formed in my stomach. I never withdrew my application. And my sister has no authority to speak for me. Too late. The position had been offered to another candidate immediately after Brooke's call. The final straw came during a family dinner with extended relatives. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Mike, and cousins joined us, along with Grandma Rose, Mom's mother, and the family matriarch at 83. Throughout dinner, Brooke subtly inserted digs about my Manhattan failure into conversation. Emily's considering the assistant manager position at Target, she announced, though I'd mentioned no such thing. It's good to have realistic expectations after everything. When I tried to correct her, Mom quickly jumped in with dessert offers. The pattern was clear. Brooke could say whatever she wanted, while I was expected to swallow both her lies and my retort. As everyone moved to the living room for coffee, Grandma Rose held me back in the kitchen. Your sister always had a jealous streak, she said quietly, her aged hands gripping mine with surprising strength. Even as a little girl, she couldn't stand when you got attention. Jealous of me? Brooke was always the favorite, I said, confused. Grandma's eyes, still sharp despite her years, met mine. Is that what you think, child? Your sister has spent her life trying to be you. When you left for New York, she finally had the spotlight. Now you're back, and she's terrified of losing it. She patted my hand. There are things about this family you don't know, Emily. Things your mother never told you. About your father, about why he really left. Before she could continue, Brooke interrupted, sweeping in to guide Grandma to the living room. Everyone's waiting for you, Grandma. Emily can handle the dishes. That night, returning from a walk to clear my head, I found my car with a long scratch down the driver's side. Brooke's SUV was parked suspiciously close. Total accident, she claimed when I confronted her. Probably neighborhood kids. You know how it is in this dangerous town, you couldn't wait to escape from. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and for the first time, I saw something I'd never recognized in my sister before. Pure, undisguised hatred. The morning after discovering Brooke had sabotaged my job application, I confronted her at her house while the kids were at school. No more tiptoeing around the issue. You called the marketing firm in Detroit and pretended to be me, I said, standing in her immaculate kitchen. You deliberately sabotaged my chance at that job. For a moment, Brooke maintained her innocent facade. Then something shifted in her expression, like a mask slipping. You weren't supposed to find out about that, she said, not bothering to deny it. But honestly, Emily, why would you want to work in Detroit? That's 2 hours away. You'd have to move. That's the point. I need to restart my career. Why would you interfere with that? Because you always leave, Brooke suddenly shouted, slamming her coffee mug down so hard it cracked. You always run off to bigger, better things while I'm stuck here. And then you come back when it all falls apart, and suddenly you're everyone's focus again. I stepped back, stunned by her outburst. Is that what this is about, attention? It's about you waltzing back in here like some tragic heroine, Brooke continued, years of resentment pouring out. Poor Emily lost her fancy job, everyone comfort her. Meanwhile, I've been here every day, taking care of Mom, raising my kids, supporting this family while you were off playing big shot in New York. Playing big shot, I worked 60-hour weeks, I earned everything I had. And I didn't, tears streamed down Brooke's face now. I gave up a scholarship to state to stay home when Mom got sick that year. I put my life on hold while you chased your dreams. But nobody ever talks about that sacrifice, do they? It's always Emily this and Emily that, and why can't you be more ambitious like your sister? Her words hit me like physical blows. I'd never known about her scholarship, never realized she'd stayed for Mom's health. Brooke, I didn't know. Of course you didn't, you were too busy planning your escape, she wiped her tears angrily. And now you're back, bonding with my kids, charming my husband, taking over like you always do. The accusation about Ryan caught me off guard. What are you talking about? Ryan's just been nice to me. Something vulnerable flashed across Brooke's face. He talks about you all the time. Emily's so accomplished. Emily's so worldly. Do you know what that's like? Hearing your husband admire your sister. I realized we'd reached the core of her fear that she was losing not just attention, but her identity and relationships to me. As twisted as her actions had been, I could suddenly see the scared little sister beneath the hostility. That afternoon, Mom called an emergency family meeting. Apparently, Ryan had come home early, overheard part of our argument, and was demanding explanations about the sabotage job application. We gathered in the living room like adversaries at a negotiation. Mom, Brooke, Ryan, and me. Emily claims Brooke has been interfering with her job search. Mom began, clearly expecting to moderate toward her preferred outcome, smoothing things over with no real consequence. It's not a claim, Kate, Ryan interrupted, surprising everyone by using Mom's first name instead of his usual Mom. I called the firm in Detroit myself. They confirmed someone identifying herself as Emily withdrew her application. And since Emily was with me and the kids at the Science Museum that morning, it could only have been Brooke. Mom looked flustered. Well, I'm sure there was a misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding, Ryan continued firmly. And from what I heard today, this isn't isolated. Brooke, have you been spreading rumors about Emily having a mental breakdown? Brooke's silence was confirmation enough. And the scratch on her car, the missing belongings, the college fund that paid for our wedding, Ryan's voice rose with each question. Did you know about that, Emily? That our wedding was funded by your education money? I just found out, I said quietly. Ryan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. I was told that money was from Brooke's college fund that she didn't use because she stayed local. I never would have agreed to such an expensive wedding had I known. Mom attempted to regain control of the conversation. Now, Ryan, what's done is done. We're family and families support each other. Support? Is that what you call this? Ryan gestured around the room. From where I'm standing, Emily's the only one who hasn't been treated like family. Later that evening, after everyone had retreated to process the confrontation, Lily knocked on my basement door. Her small face was serious as she handed me a folded piece of paper. I made this for you, Aunt Emily, she said. It was a carefully drawn card with a stick figure labeled Best Aunt standing next to a small girl with yellow curls. Mom said you're a failure, Lily continued in that brutally honest way of children. But I don't think you are, you help me with math and read me stories. Mom never has time for that. My heart broke and mended simultaneously. Thank you, sweetie, that means more than you know. After she left, Mom came down, looking uneasy. We sat in awkward silence before she finally spoke. Emily, I know things seem bad right now, but you have to understand Brooke's perspective. She's always felt like she was in your shadow. My shadow? Mom, you've always favored her. Favored her? Mom looked genuinely surprised. Emily, you were always so independent, so confident. Brooke needed more support. Or maybe I had to be independent because I never got that support, I countered. Something shifted in Mom's expression. You remind me so much of him sometimes. Dad, I asked, surprised she'd bring him up. We rarely spoke of my father, who had left when I was 12 and Brooke was 10. The ambition, the restlessness. Mom's voice took on a bitter edge. Always looking for something more, never satisfied with what's right in front of you. Is that why you resent me? Because I remind you of Dad? The question hung between us, and for once, Mom didn't immediately deny it. He abandoned this family, Emily, walked out for a new life that didn't include us. And you, she stopped herself. And I what? Followed in his footsteps by moving to New York? Is that what you think? Sometimes, she admitted quietly, when you left, it felt like losing him all over again. The conversation opened a wound I'd thought long healed. All these years, I'd believed my father had simply abandoned us for another woman, another family. It was the story Mom had always told. That night, lying in bed, I replayed every interaction since coming home, including the whispered comment that had started it all. I can't wait for Emily to leave. Now I understood the full context. Brooke hadn't just been annoyed by my presence, she'd been terrified by it. Terrified I would reclaim some place in the family she'd carefully constructed in my absence, terrified of being overlooked again, terrified of losing the identity she'd built as the good daughter who stayed. And somewhere in that realization, I began to see how our family's dysfunction ran much deeper than I'd ever known. The morning after the disastrous family meeting, I packed a bag. Not all my belongings, just enough for a few days. I needed space, perspective, anything but the suffocating tension of that house. Mom watched from the doorway as I threw clothes into my overnight bag. Where will you go? You don't have money for a hotel. I'll figure it out, I said, not meeting her eyes. The hurt from our conversation about Dad still felt raw. As I loaded my scratch car, Brooke pulled into the driveway, her expression unreadable. We stared at each other for a long moment before she went inside without a word. I had no real destination in mind, just away. But fate had other plans. 10 miles outside town, dark clouds gathered, and a spring thunderstorm broke with sudden fury. Visibility dropped to nearly zero as rain pounded my windshield. Then, with a sputtering cough, my engine died. Multiple dashboard lights illuminated at once. Perfect. After several failed restart attempts, I called a tow truck, which delivered my car and me to the only mechanic open on a Sunday, a garage attached to a familiar coffee shop. Alternators shot, the mechanic said after a quick inspection. Won't have the part until Tuesday at earliest. Soaking wet and defeated, I trudged into Perk's Coffee, where Melanie took one look at me and pointed to the back room. Go dry off, I've got spare clothes in my office from yoga class. 20 minutes later, dressed in borrowed leggings and an oversized Perk's Coffee sweatshirt, I sat at the counter nursing the strongest coffee Melanie could brew. So, she said, wiping the counter beside me, want to talk about it? The whole story poured out of me, the job sabotage, the confrontation, the revelations about my father, all of it. Melanie listened without interruption, occasionally refilling my cup. When I finished, she leaned against the counter, arms crossed. There's something you should know about your dad. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. You knew my father? Everyone in town knew David Parker, she said. He was the high school English teacher before he left. My older brother had him senior year. I stared at her, confusion mounting. But, my father was a sales rep, he traveled all the time, that's why. Why he left, is that what Kate told you? Melanie's expression softened with sympathy. Emily, your dad was pushed out. He didn't abandon your family. The world tilted on its axis. What are you talking about? Your parents had problems for years. Your mom wanted him to take a corporate job with her brother's company in Chicago. More money, more status. Your dad refused to leave teaching. They fought constantly. I remembered the arguments, doors slamming, hushed angry voices after Brooke and I went to bed, but Mom had always said it was because Dad was unfaithful, unreliable. When he finally agreed to the Chicago interview to make peace, your mom found comfort elsewhere, Melanie continued delicately, with Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike, Mom's brother-in-law, my voice rose in disbelief. Aunt Patricia's husband. Melanie nodded. Your dad discovered them when he came back early from that interview. He moved out that night, but wanted joint custody of you girls. Your mom threatened to expose the affair to everyone, including you kids and Aunt Patricia, if he didn't walk away completely. My mind reeled, reconstructing my childhood with this new information. How do you know all this? Small town, plus my mom was the school secretary back then, she witnessed some of the aftermath. Melanie hesitated. There's more. Your dad didn't just leave town. He fought for contact with you girls. Sent letters, called. When those were blocked, he sent child support checks more than required. And birthday cards every year. I never got any cards, I whispered, my throat tight. I know. Melanie disappeared into the back room, returning with a small, weathered box. Someone brought these by about 3 years ago. Said they found them in Kate's attic during a remodeling job. Asked if I could get them to you someday, since everyone knew we were friends in school. With trembling hands, I opened the box. Inside were dozens of envelopes, all addressed to Emily Parker or Brooke Parker in the same neat handwriting. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, congratulation cards for graduations and achievements, all unopened. And beneath those, bound with a rubber band, were copies of canceled checks, years of child support payments, far exceeding any court requirement. Some were marked for Emily's college, others for Brooke's college. He's been in Indianapolis this whole time, Melanie said softly, teaching at a private school there. Never remarried. I stared at the evidence of a father who hadn't abandoned us but had been erased from our lives. A father who'd continued to provide financially and emotionally, even when his efforts were intercepted. So the college fund that paid for Brooke's wedding was probably built from your father's additional contributions, Melanie confirmed. The court-ordered support went for living expenses, but these extra amounts, they were substantial and specifically designated. As I processed this earth-shattering information, the bell above the coffee shop door jingled. Brooke stood there, rain-soaked and wild-eyed. Your phone is going straight to voicemail, she accused, spotting me at the counter. Mom's worried sick. Is she? I asked, suddenly exhausted by the lies. Or is she worried about what I might discover? I gestured to the box of cards and letters. Brooke's eyes widened, recognition and panic flashing across her face. Where did you get those? They were found in Mom's attic, Melanie supplied, crossing her arms, along with records of money your father sent specifically for the girls' education. Color drained from Brooke's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying, I shouted, sudden rage propelling me to my feet. Just stop. Dad didn't abandon us. Mom drove him away and then hid every attempt he made to stay in our lives, and you knew, didn't you? At some point, you found out the truth. Other customers turned to stare as Brooke and I faced off in the middle of the coffee shop. Years of resentment, misunderstanding, and manipulation hung between us. I found the cards when I was 16, Brooke admitted, her voice barely audible. A box in Mom's closet. I confronted her. And she said Dad was trying to turn us against her. That he'd abandoned us for his career and was just sending these out of guilt. Brooke's composure cracked. I believed her, Emily. She's our mother. Why wouldn't I believe her? When did you realize she was lying? Brooke sank into a chair. After Lily was born. I found more cards, more checks. Some Google searches filled in the blanks. By then, it had been so long. What was I supposed to do? Tell you Mom had been lying to us our entire lives? Yes, I cried. That's exactly what you should have done. And destroy our family? What good would it have done? You were thriving in New York. I had my life here. Brooke's defenses visibly crumbled. Besides, you were always Dad's favorite. You got his brains, his ambition. I was just there. The revelation struck me like lightning. Beneath Brooke's perfect life, beneath the manipulation and jealousy lay a profound insecurity I'd never recognized. She'd always felt second best to both our parents. "So you punished me for it?" I asked. "Sabotaged my jobs, spread rumors, turned the whole town against me?" "I panicked when you came back," she admitted. "Everything I built here, my reputation, my standing, my whole identity, it's all I have. When you return, everyone started asking about your big New York career, your accomplishments. Even Ryan," she trailed off. "Even Ryan what?" "He's always admired you. Your ambition, your independence. Things I gave up." Tears streaked down Brooke's face. "Our marriage has been struggling for years. When you came back, I was terrified he'd see everything he's missing with me." The coffee shop had emptied, Melanie discreetly flipping the closed sign to give us privacy. In the ensuing silence, years of misconceptions and manufactured rivalry lay exposed between us. "I want to speak to Dad," I said finally. "Do you know how to contact him?" Brooke nodded slowly. "I have his number. I've never called it." As she wrote down the information, I felt a strange mixture of grief and hope. My family as I'd understood it was a carefully constructed fiction. But beneath the rubble of that fiction lay the possibility of something true. The Indianapolis prep school where my father taught English looked exactly as I'd imagined. Ivy-covered brick, meticulous grounds, students in uniforms hurrying between classes. I sat in my newly repaired car for 20 minutes, gathering courage before approaching the administration building. "I'm looking for David Parker," I told the receptionist, my voice steadier than I felt. "Do you have an appointment with Mr. Parker?" she asked. "No, I'm his daughter." Her eyes widened slightly, but she maintained professional composure as she picked up the phone. Minutes later, a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair and familiar eyes rounded the corner. He stopped when he saw me, disbelief and recognition warring on his face. "Emily?" 16 years dissolved in an instant. Despite the gray hair and new lines around his eyes, I knew him immediately. The same gentle expression, the same slight tilt of his head when curious, by father. "Hi, Dad," I managed, my carefully prepared speech evaporating. We sat in his classroom after school hours, surrounded by literary posters and student essays, awkwardly navigating our first conversation in over a decade and a half. "I thought you didn't want to see me," he said, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, "when the cards came back unopened year after year." "I never knew about them," I explained, recounting Melanie's revelations and the discovered box. "Mom told us you abandoned the family. That you chose your career over us." Bitter irony twisted his smile. "And all this time, I believed you girls had chosen your mother's version of events over any possibility of knowing me." The truth emerged gradually over hours of conversation. Their marriage had been troubled for years before the breaking point. Mom's affair with Uncle Mike had ended shortly after Dad left, but the damage was irreparable. Dad had indeed tried to maintain contact, sending cards, letters, and extra money specifically designated for our futures. "I earmarked funds for both your college educations," he confirmed, "far beyond the court requirements. Your mother assured me it would be properly saved." When I told him about Brooke's wedding, anger flashed across his face. "That money was meant for your education, not a wedding venue and catering." "You've been following my career?" I asked, noticing framed New York Magazine issues on his wall featuring campaigns I'd worked on. "Every step," he admitted. "I couldn't be there physically, but I watched from afar, business journals, LinkedIn, industry news. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, Emily." The revelation that he'd been present in this way, even when physically absent, unlocked something tight in my chest. And when he said he was proud, words I'd never heard from Mom about my marketing career, tears flowed freely. As our meeting ended, Dad made an unexpected offer. "I've saved considerably over the years, living simply. I'd like to help you restart, Emily. Seed money for your own marketing firm, if you'd like. Or funds to relocate, whichever you." "You don't have to do that," I protested. "I want to. Consider it 16 years of missed birthdays and Christmases." His eyes crinkled with emotion. "Plus, I happen to know several business owners here who could use marketing expertise. if you'd consider Indianapolis. I drove back to Michigan with a check, a list of potential clients, and something far more valuable: the truth about my past and a father back in my life. Instead of returning to Mom's house, I checked into a modest hotel. The next morning, I visited Perks with a proposition for Melanie. "The apartment above your coffee shop, is it still for rent?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Thinking of staying in town?" "Temporarily. I need neutral ground while I figure out next steps." By that afternoon, I'd signed a 2-month lease on the small but charming apartment above Perks Coffee. My first independent space since leaving New York. With Dad's seed money, I opened a small marketing consultancy focused on helping local businesses improve their digital presence. My first client, Perks Coffee, whose outdated website and non-existent social media presence needed serious attention. "I can't pay New York rates," Melanie warned. "How about a discount in exchange for free coffee and reduced rent?" I countered. Within weeks, Perks had a professional website, active social media accounts, and a growing online order system. Other local businesses noticed, and referrals began trickling in. The strategic distancing from my mother and sister gave me space to process everything I'd learned. I established clear boundaries: no unannounced visits, no commentary on my career choices, no rumors or interference. Mom's initial reaction was hurt and indignation. "After everything I've done for you, you're moving out without even discussing it." "I needed space to process the fact that you've lied to me my entire life about Dad," I replied calmly, refusing to engage with her attempts to cast herself as the victim. Brooke's response surprised me. Instead of anger or more sabotage, she seemed almost relieved. "Ryan and I are starting marriage counseling," she told me during a cautious coffee meeting. "He says we can't move forward with so many secrets between us." "That sounds healthy," I offered, maintaining emotional distance while acknowledging her effort. I developed a careful relationship with my niece and nephew, arranging to take them for ice cream or library trips with Ryan's blessing. These moments were precious, building a genuine relationship without the shadow of competition with Brooke. "Can you help me with my book report, Aunt Emily?" Lily would ask, knowing I'd take her questions seriously. "Can we draw superheroes again?" Noah would plead, his artistic talent blossoming with encouragement. Meanwhile, my small marketing business began gaining traction. The website I designed for the local bakery increased their orders by 30%. The social media campaign for the hardware store brought in customers from neighboring towns. My New York experience translated well to small businesses hungry for professional marketing on a budget. An unexpected opportunity arose when Richardson Manufacturing, a mid-sized company on the outskirts of town, contacted me about their marketing department. "We're expanding nationally," the HR director explained. "Need someone with both big city experience and local understanding. Your name came up several times." The position, marketing director with significant creative control and a salary that rivaled my New York earnings, seemed custom-made. When I discovered Ryan had recommended me, pieces clicked into place. "You're qualified," he said simply when I thanked him. "The company needs exactly what you offer." My father drove up for dinner the weekend I signed the contract. As we celebrated at the one upscale restaurant in town, he raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, eyes bright with pride, "and to finally being able to celebrate my daughter's accomplishments in person." That night, walking back to my apartment, I quite literally ran into Jason Miller, my high school crush and debate team partner, as he was leaving the bookstore. "Emily Parker," he said, recognition and pleasure warming his voice. "I heard rumors you were back in town, but I figured they couldn't be true." "The rumors of my return are not exaggerated," I quipped, noting how well he'd aged since high school. "Though pretty much every other rumor probably is." His laugh was exactly as I remembered it. "I never believed those anyway. Coffee sometime. I'm back after the divorce, managing my parents' bookstore while figuring out next steps." "I'd like that," I replied, surprising myself with how much I meant it. As spring turned to summer, I found myself building something I'd never expected: a life in my hometown, but on my terms. Not running from the past, not trapped by family dysfunction, but consciously creating something new from the broken pieces of what came before. 6 months after overhearing Brooke's whispered wish for my departure, I hosted a housewarming party in my new condo. The space was modest compared to luxury Manhattan standards but felt like a palace after the basement room at Mom's house. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, and windows overlooking the river that ran through town. My marketing consultancy had outgrown its one-woman operation. I'd hired 2 part-time assistants, recent college graduates eager to gain experience without moving to a major city. The Richardson manufacturing position provided stability while my side business allowed creative freedom. I'd found a balance I never achieved in New York's grueling corporate environment. "This place is gorgeous," Melanie said, admiring the open-concept living area where 24 guests mingled. "Major upgrade from that closet above my shop." "I wouldn't have survived without that closet," I replied, squeezing her hand in genuine gratitude. "Or your friendship." Jason brought homemade bruschetta, his culinary skills yet another pleasant discovery in our 4 months of dating. What had started as casual coffee had evolved into something neither of us had expected, a relationship based on shared history but focused on the present. "The bookstore's website has another order from Indianapolis," he mentioned, checking his phone. "Your dad's students are keeping us busy." My biweekly drives to Indianapolis had become a cherished ritual. Dad and I were building the relationship we should have had all along, discussing books, debating politics, sharing meals. He'd even visited my condo several times, slowly reconnecting with the town he'd left under such painful circumstances. Mom arrived late to the housewarming, her entrance hesitant. Since my revelations about Dad and my subsequent move, she'd begun therapy reluctantly at first, then with growing commitment as she confronted the damage her deceptions had caused. "Beautiful place," she offered, handing me a houseplant. "The light in here is perfect for a fiddle leaf fig." Small talk was all we could manage in group settings, but it was progress from the tearful recriminations that had characterized our early conversations after the truth emerged. Brooke and Ryan arrived last, their children racing ahead to find me. "Aunt Emily, we brought you cookies," Lily announced, presenting a carefully decorated box. "I helped frost them." And I drew the card, "No" added, proudly holding up his artwork. As the children chatted excitedly about their contributions, I noticed the subtle changes in Brooke. The defensive sharpness had softened. 6 months of therapy had begun addressing the insecurities that had fueled her behavior. Our relationship remained complicated. Trust, once shattered, rebuilds slowly, but the toxic competition had largely dissolved once its foundation of lies was exposed. "Your marketing tips for Ryan's department got him that promotion," Brooke mentioned as we stood alone in the kitchen later. "He's happier at work than I've seen in years." "He's incredibly talented," I replied. "He just needed someone to recognize it." "You've always been good at that," she acknowledged. "Seeing potential in people." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was honest, a step toward the authentic relationship we'd never had. After the guests departed, Jason helped me clean up, working companionably in the kitchen. "You've built something remarkable here," he observed, loading the dishwasher. "Not just the condo or the business, a life, on your terms." His observation resonated deeply. The forced return home that had initially felt like failure had transformed into something unexpected, not a retreat, but a reclamation. The following weekend, I hosted a smaller, more significant gathering, a family dinner with Mom, Brooke, Ryan, the kids, and my father. The first time we'd all been together in 16 years. The initial awkwardness between my parents gradually eased as the evening progressed. They would never be friends, but they could occupy the same space without the old poison. Dad and Ryan discovered shared interests in fly fishing. Mom genuinely engaged with Dad's stories about his teaching career. After dinner, Brooke and I stood on the balcony, watching the river below. "I always envied you," she admitted, breaking our comfortable silence. "Your courage to leave, to build something all your own. I thought staying made me the loyal one, but maybe I was just afraid." "And I envied your certainty," I countered. Your clear path, your family, your roots. I was running towards something, but also away. We'd both constructed narratives about the other that served our own insecurities. The truth, as always, was more complex than either version. The healing wasn't perfect or complete. Mom still occasionally slipped into manipulation. Brooke still had moments of jealousy. I still struggled with trust, but awareness created possibility where none had existed before. My New York friends were surprised by my decision to stay in Michigan. "You're choosing small-town life after Manhattan," my former colleague Tasha had asked during a video call, clearly baffled. "I'm choosing authenticity," I corrected, and as it turns out, that was possible here all along. The Emily who had fled to New York at 18 had been running from family dysfunction and toward a vision of success defined by external markers: prestigious address, impressive title, designer wardrobe. The Emily who chose to stay at 28 was building success from the inside out: meaningful work, genuine relationships, and hard-won self-knowledge. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had to leave to find myself, and then lose everything to find my way home. Not to the home that had damaged me, but to a home I created on my own terms. That night, after everyone left, I stood in my living room, remembering the moment 6 months earlier when I'd overheard Brooke's whispered wish for my departure. The pain of that moment had catalyzed a journey I would never have chosen but now wouldn't trade. Sometimes the most devastating moments contain seeds of necessary transformation. Sometimes shutting a door opens possibilities you never imagined, and sometimes finding your way forward means first going back, not to stay in the past, but to finally make peace with it. Have you ever had a moment when overhearing something painful ultimately led to positive change in your life? Or experienced a situation where returning home revealed family dynamics you hadn't seen before? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more stories of transformation and resilience. Remember, sometimes our greatest strength emerges precisely when we feel most broken. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and until next time, be gentle with yourself as you navigate your own path to authentic happiness.